Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today I've got some r/entitled people for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Please don't refer to me. Entitled neighbor demands we extend our wall and threatens to report us to the city. This is so stupid. I've lived in this house with my grandparents for about 6 years. When we moved in, we had this awful wooden retaining wall facing the neighbor's property. Her property is downhill from ours, so the retaining wall keeps our yard from washing away into hers. We found out last year that the wall was rotting and needed to be replaced, so we recently had it replaced with these beautiful retaining stones. We also extended the wall past where the previous wall had been. We can't take it all the way to the street because of the city's guidelines, but it goes far enough. It could be extended by maybe 3 feet, but we couldn't afford to go any further. Well, the neighbor, who we had gotten along with until now, didn't like it. She complained to us that our wall wasn't long enough and her yard was going to wash away. And she already had rivers running through her yard. We live on a street with no sidewalk, so everyone has ditches for drainage. She never cleans hers despite having huge trees dropping sticks and leaves into it. So her yard floods when it rains. She's blaming us for that. She then said she could pay for them, the landscapers, to extend the wall. Then showed my grandmother some brown retaining stones. She said she could get to finish the wall. Our wall is gray, so of course Grandma said no. The neighbor said she couldn't deal with it and didn't want to be but would report us to the city if she had to. My grandma said, "Go ahead," and walked away. What makes her think she has any right to mess with our wall? Our landscapers even removed a stump from her property for her for free. She asked them if they could. And she never even thanked them. As far as we know, she either hasn't reported us to the city or the city told her to pound sand. She's tried to make conversation with me, but I won't talk to her. I've had too much to worry about without having her trying to manipulate me into talking to my grandma. Also, some edits to add some clarification. Her yard has been damaged like that since before we moved in. She told us as much, so it wasn't caused by our new wall. The new wall was put in by professionals, so it has a proper drainage system installed. None of the damage she pointed out could have been caused by our new wall. We know this because it hadn't rained in the days between the wall being finished and her complaining. So there was no storm water for our wall to let into her yard. Also, the damage was on the other side of the yard, so it wasn't caused by the installation itself. She never told us about the water damage in her yard until she was demanding we extend our wall. If she had, we probably would have put a new one in sooner. The landscapers did get her permission to go onto her property to build the wall. The wall isn't on her property, but in order to put everything in properly, they had to use her yard. She was fine with it, as long as they fixed her yard when they were done, which they did. She confirmed that it looked great. We got all the proper permits and everything, so there's really nothing she can do at this point. I mean, all I can really have is a couple of theories of why she's complaining, but at the end of the day, wouldn't you rather look at a nice stone wall instead of a rotting wood retaining wall? Or maybe she just wanted to extend it, or maybe she was jealous that her neighbors had new landscaping that she couldn't have. I don't know. Hell, maybe she was just looking for a reason to blame her own landscaping failing and falling apart on something that wasn't in her control so she could feel a little bit less bad about it. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe she just wants drama for the sake of drama. What do y'all think? Toxylin, lady at the holiday resort. Seeing you get the karma you deserve still satisfies me to this day. My family and I went to Crete on holiday, a lovely all-inclusive hotel. Close by the beach, decent food, drinks, pools, sunbeds, all the fun things. The hotel was mainly people from Denmark. Thinking back, I don't actually remember there being anyone else but Danish people. I'm from Denmark myself. There was a woman and her husband who also spent the week at the hotel when we were there. The husband was very quiet and seemed to just be dragged around by her. We got quite used to her complaining at dinner, her fussy way of marching up to the young holiday guides at the hotel and nagging at them, but we did not mind her much at first. Me and my family love experiencing local culture, and while exploring the city we were in, on top of a tall hill at the back of the city we found a wonderful local restaurant. It wasn't even really a restaurant. It was a Greek mama who cooked in her kitchen and let people eat on her terrace with a beautiful view of the sea. It was very humble, and the food, honest and amazing, just delicious in every way. The mama was so caring and kind and kept coming to interact with us. It was amazing, so we ate a couple of times by her along this week. One night, coming back to the hotel, the Karen came marching up to us. Karen, how dare you? Us, what? You've paid for your all-inclusive meals and then you don't even eat dinner here? Well, yeah, we paid for it so we can do what we want with it. And if we want to eat somewhere else, we can do that. Don't you think it's a massive waste? I mean, we're sure they're used to it. Well, I think it's disrespectful and you ought to know better. Us just laughing and walking away from her. Well, the next day, her and her husband had booked this hike through a gorge. Samaria Gorge, something like that. You hike through this nature area, then you end up in a rural city only available either by walking there or taking a boat. You then arrive at the city, take a boat, and then a bus to get back to the hotel. Well, lady and husband weren't exactly fit. The only reason we know what happened is because her and her husband were missing at breakfast. When they arrived later, her thundercloud was so heavy the whole hotel felt it. We then saw a very shaken hotel guide, a girl probably like 18 to 20 years old, coming up to comfort her as she told the story. Well, Karen and husband had taken this hike. Halfway through, their bodies had given up and they were too far in to return. So they had to wait for a couple of donkeys from the rural city to come pick them up and carry them to the end destination. Once arriving at the city, the last boat had sailed, and so they had to rent a hotel for the night on absolute overprice. And the next morning, take the boat and then take the bus back. After this, while Karen was still a thundercloud the rest of the holiday, we didn't hear more to her. She and her husband stuck to each other in the corners and were more quiet. I felt sorry for them ruining their own holiday, and I'm glad for us they didn't ruin anything, but have since just given us a lot to laugh about. Must be hard to be that entitled, and poor husband, my mind goes out to him. Edit, yes, I have a lot of sympathy for the staff, tour guides, and the poor donkeys. Honestly, anyone who ever has to interact with this woman. Edit 2, I found a link to the restaurant if anyone ever has a chance to try it out. And looking at the restaurant, maybe I can get some pictures on screen for y'all. Wow, that is actually a really beautiful restaurant with a really pretty view. Wow. Huh. Honestly, it just sounds like the couple in question just wanted reasons to complain on their vacation. And honestly, it's a really miserable way to approach being on vacation, is trying to find reasons to be upset or mad at something or someone to just about it. I mean, honestly, I've dealt with people where on vacation they'll still make it about someone else and drag the drama from the day-to-day into the vacation. And it's like, cool, the vacation we were supposed to have away from everything is now entirely encompassed by everything else. Or some minor little inconvenience happens while on vacation, and suddenly the entire vacation becomes about that minor inconvenience rather than just rolling with it. It happens on vacation. Nothing ever goes according to plan. And at least in my experience, as long as you're not in imminent danger, you'll have a lot more fun and create a lot more memories rolling with the mistakes and with the hiccups rather than spending the rest of your vacation upset about the hiccup. I mean, hell, OP's a great example. Yeah, they took the loss on a dinner that they had previously paid for, but also had, by the looks of it, a wonderful dinner that was fairly local and with a beautiful view. I don't know, maybe I just have a really lax approach on how vacations are done because life is already way too structured as it is. I like things being a little bit more by the flow instead of, well, planned out down to the hour. Mandolin Pebbles. Some people want a quiet Sunday. Today, between 10:30 a.m. and 12 p.m., this lady came up on 4 people on my street, one of them being my husband, and tried to tell them that they needed to stop mowing the lawns. Her reason? Some people around here want a quiet Sunday. The final person she told, our neighbor Joe, fake name. A little aside about Joe. He's honestly the friendliest neighbor on the street. My husband and I joke that he's the mayor of the street. Joe had stopped his mower to talk to my husband while he was walking my dog. This lady came up to them with the same song and dance about wanting a quiet Sunday. Joe laughed and said, "We'd all be having one if you were at home instead of out here yapping off at people just trying to take care of their homes." My husband said he'd never seen a person's face go so red. She stomped off. Turns out she lives at the end of the road that leads to our road. We live in a cul-de-sac, almost a quarter-mile away from our home. Update, she's having a picnic. Should I go down there and tell her some people around here would like to have a quiet holiday? So, I'm a night owl. I exist from the hours of God knows when to God knows how. It's very common for me to have to listen to my neighbor's yard work while I'm trying to sleep on a Sunday morning. But at the same time, it's not their fault for maintaining their yard, it's technically my fault for having such a f***ed up sleep schedule. However, all I do is just put my headphones on and sleep with some headphones and listen to some ASMR and call things good. It's not their fault. And because of this, oftentimes I'll be mowing my lawn at very early hours in the morning or sometimes kind of close to the nights. I went out of my way to purchase quiet lawn care equipment to make sure this wouldn't be an issue with my neighbors. Electric mowers are actually kind of special, not gonna lie. But like, you gotta learn to cohabitate with people that are in your area, because if you're not, you're just gonna create weird, bitter resentment situations and make things awkward, and then suddenly you're dealing with the fact that your neighbors are outside and you're mad at them and you did something stupid and now you don't want to go outside because you don't want to deal with that. Like, let's say, out of a hypothetical, clearly hypothetical of course, not pointing to anyone specific, you had an ex who, while your neighbors were just out there in their yard having a good time, specifically in earshot, called your neighbor's dogs bad dogs and then went back inside? And then with the window open, made a shit ton of negative remarks about how horrible they are as people for having quote-unquote bad dogs, which they're not. I've actually gotten to know those dogs and they're pretty A-okay. But still, makes it really hard to want to go outside and like try to mend things up with your neighbors, because it's like, well, this is really fucking awkward, because how do I explain to them that my hypothetical ex, who purposely said a bunch of really shitty things in earshot, knowing that they were doing so, to specifically start drama and just be mean about it, is now out of the picture, and that was 2 years ago. So now how do I explain, like, hey, sorry I haven't, like, talked to you about this sooner, but the person that was really rude about your dogs and your kids and your activities isn't around anymore, and it only took me 2 years to have a conversation with you about this because I'm a fucking socially awkward night owl goblin. Like, that's not a good conversation to have with your neighbor. Sapphire. Sapphire, but with extra P's and R's and with Y's. It's quite the spelling, honestly. Person expecting me to give them my earnings for her charity cause. Years ago, I taught Zumba classes. When there was a tragedy or someone was in need, often a bunch of instructors from around the town would get together to do a Zumbathon to raise money. I used to co-teach at a church, and the classes were very well attended. Like 2 classes per night, twice a week, with 100 to 150 people per class. Every once in a while, the church would ask us to do a fundraiser, and we usually just announced ahead of time that we were donating that night's receipts to the church in case people wanted to contribute extra. One woman called me because she was part of a walkathon or something where you put a team together and the team raises money together to donate to the overall cause. She wanted me to donate the money we earned from a regular class to give to her for her charity. I explained that we are happy to do fundraisers for groups, but they have to provide the venue and participant. We would promote their event in our classes and teach for free, but it was their event. She didn't like this. She figured since we do it for the church that hosted our classes, we should do it for her, too. I pointed out to her that this was my job and how I earned money to eat and pay my bills. She knew my co-instructor was a teacher, so she said she'd talk to her since she had another job. I asked her if she'd already asked everyone else she knew to donate a day's wages to her cause. She was not happy with me. It still astounds me that this person decided the way to donate to a cause was to make someone else do all the work and sacrifice. I am not gonna lie, I first read the title as Earrings, and had to just re-record the title because I genuinely did originally read it as Earrings, and then was very confused where the earrings came into play. And then I realized, oh, earnings. She was asking for a day's worth of earnings to be donated to her cause. And that does make a lot more sense, but I was kind of excited for some kind of like up twist where it's like, well, if you won't donate your entire Zumba class's earnings, then maybe you can throw in your earrings for me, and we'll call it even then. I was kind of expecting to go that direction, and then I realized that, oh, nope, my dyslexia just entered full swing, and I misread the word entirely. Now, onto the post itself. It makes sense for the church to do what they're doing, because if they're not charging them to host the Zumba classes in the church, and they just ask for the occasional donation, like once a month or something like that, that's a pretty sick gig right there. And it makes sense. I mean, they're hosting the venue. Definitely a really goofy situation, and I do hope that it's just something as simple as is that she didn't realize how entitled her request came off and was just really wanting to get more people in for her cause and was really passionate about it and didn't realize how she was actually coming off in the end. That's my hope anyways. But I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think, because there's definitely a pretty icky air to it the moment that she hears, yeah, I'd be donating a day's worth of my earnings to you and I can't really afford that. Followed by, yeah, well, your friend's a teacher, so I'm gonna go ask her. That leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Bride 1234109. My neighbor thinks I should change my camera angles to look over his house too. This is ridiculous, so I had to share. I recently bought and had outdoor cameras installed for my house after I saw them and all they can do at my aunt's house. The cameras are pointed around my house. After a few days of getting them installed, my neighbor knocked on the door and asked me about them. I told him that they're for extra security. He asked about the features and I sent him the ad from the company. He then asked something I wasn't prepared for. He asked if I can change a few of my camera angles so that it can have his house in the view as well. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he told me he was serious. He said that we should do the neighborly thing and move the cameras over so that if anything happens at his house, he'll have footage. He also asked for access as well and said that we can both have the added security. I told him no and suggested that he should purchase his own. He threw a fit and is now threatening to contact the HOA if I don't honor his request. Good luck, buddy. Update. I appreciate your comments and suggestions. I did reach out to my HOA yesterday via email about the situation. They responded a few hours after saying that they were made aware of the situation, but that no rule was broken, that I'm in my rights to have surveillance of my property. They also added a reminder to try and limit the view of other properties. Another neighbor of mine texted me that my neighbor was so upset about the outcome of his inquiry that he apparently has decided to pull out of our neighborhood watch. His reasoning being that he doesn't feel like the neighbors are truly trying to look out for each other, so he'll only watch his own back from now on. Poor thing. I can't even follow the logic of being upset with someone for saying no when you pretty much walked up and said, "Hey, I know you just paid for these cameras and paid to have them installed, but you should point them to my house to watch over them for free and also give me access to your entire system, which is watching over your property as well, for free." What do you mean, no? Then he pulls out the classic "I'm telling on you" to the HOA, "I'll show you," and that doesn't even go his favor, which is crazy because he probably thought the HOA would be very much in favor of bullying someone with fines and other bullshit just for the sake of causing problems, and that didn't go his way, so now he's taking himself off the neighborhood watch because that'll show them all. Yeah, dude, you're really showing them. The person who definitely just paid for extra cameras and security is totally going to miss having you as neighborhood watch. God, I would have loved to see the email that he sent to the HOA and what that would have sounded like. My neighbor installed cameras and they're refusing to angle the cameras so they're looking at my property as well, which is like the exact opposite of what you would be expecting for the HOA to get an email about. Normally it would be something of, "Hey, my neighbors installed cameras and I'm very worried they're facing my property," but instead it's the exact opposite. So the HOA rep was probably like, "What the hell is going on? What Twilight Zone did I just walk into?" Extra cheesy broccoli. Karen yells at me for not selling her baby beer. So I'm first going to let you all know a bit about me. I don't really drink, I don't do drugs, and I've been homeless for a while. I managed to find myself a job way up north at a marina, far from my city. This literally just happened. I was sitting at the counter. My job involves renting boats and cottages, and we have a storefront that sells beer, fishing supplies, boat rentals, and food. A person came up to the counter with a 24-pack of beer and tried to buy it. The guy looked young, under 19. I'm Canadian, so you need to be 19 to purchase alcohol. He didn't have ID, so I told him I couldn't sell him booze. He clapped back at me, saying it's okay because he's 20. I told him I can't sell you anything without ID. No ID, no sale. He really talked down to me, saying he's old enough and told me not to make him get it. He pointed to his car and said he's busy. So I said, "Oh, so you're driving without a license?" The guy got flustered and left. About 30 minutes later, this older woman walks in, and I see the kid from before outside. She grabbed a 24-pack and came to the counter. She pointed outside and asked if I was the person who wouldn't sell her baby beer. I said, "Yeah, no ID, no sale." She huffed at me, said, "Whatever," and tried to make her purchase. I asked, "Does your kid have his ID on him now?" She said no, that she's buying the beer. I said, "Unfortunately, I can't sell it to you without him having ID." She screamed at me, saying she's in her 40s and has her license. I explained that I couldn't sell her alcohol knowing she's giving it to a potential minor or someone without an ID. She screamed, called me a moron, flipped me off, and said she was going to call corporate to complain about me. I told her it's a small business, but I'll give you the owner's number. She left, and I called the owner to explain everything. She laughed and said I handled it perfectly. So yeah, LOL. Honestly, for those of you who do work in a location that sells alcohol, the whole if you don't have your ID on you when you drove here ends up popping up, that is a terrific way of diffusing that, because you really do lock them in a catch-22. You either don't have your ID and drove here illegally, or you're lying to me. Also, I got clickbaited, which means you're probably gonna get clickbaited too, so have fun with that. But in all seriousness, if you're trying to convince someone that your son is of age to buy alcohol, but why didn't you sell my baby beer? That's not really helping his case. If he's of age and did accidentally forget his ID, how come he didn't just simply bring it the second time around when his mom was there? It doesn't make any sense. And when I say that, I don't mean the situation doesn't make any sense. I mean their excuse doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fly. It's not logical. I don't see how they would have thought that would have worked, where they just gonna be like, oh, that makes total sense now. Here's your alcohol. I mean, she basically admitted to the cashier that, hey, I'm buying this alcohol for a potential minor. Please sell it to me. I'm in my 40s. Ma'am, that is a crime in the US, and I almost guarantee it's a crime in Canada. Scared Fisherman 7749. Entitled cousin is mad we didn't personally tell her we sold our truck. My father and I have been working tirelessly on decommissioning our family farm as the property is being sold due to my grandfather's estate. So, he and I have been constantly dealing with the county, lawyers, realtors, buyers, selling off equipment, vehicles for the last 4 months. My father is the executor of the estate, and he's been open and honest about the sale with the benefactors, which include my entitled cousin. The farm was supposed to be sold a few weeks ago, but the deal ended up falling through, so my father and I extended our timeline for the decommissioning process. We were able to sell a few vehicles last week, one of which was my uncle's truck. My uncle gave the truck to my grandfather 20 years ago, and it's been rotting in a field ever since. My father told the entire family 4 months ago to go through the things that they want from the farm because he was going to sell or throw away everything on the property. My cousin found out yesterday that we sold the vehicle, and she texted both my father and I about it, saying she wasn't personally informed that we were going to sell it, and that she had wanted to see it one last time. The truck once belonged to my uncle, my cousin's father, who has since passed on, so she has an emotional attachment to it. If this truck meant so much to her, why didn't she just take it, like Lamau? My father and I were both pissed off because we've been so busy dealing with the entire estate for the last 4 months on our own. No other family member has bothered to help. The farm was supposed to be sold a few weeks ago, and she hasn't been to the farm in those 4 months. My cousin is an extremely entitled person that expects special treatment from everyone, no matter the circumstances, and this incident is one of many. I just love how we're both being blamed for her mistake. So like, I can understand it having sentimental value and her wanting to see it one last time, and if it was just sold with no warning, that would definitely be one thing. But if you tell someone, hey, this is going to be sold in the next 4 months, so if you want to take a look at it, you better do that, or if you want it, you should take it, and nothing happens in those 4 months, and then it's sold and suddenly it's a huge problem and she just really wanted to see it one last time. It's like, why didn't you just go to the farm when it was first announced then, huh? Like, I can certainly understand something having sentimental value and wanting to remember your dead father by it because, you know, it was his truck and maybe there's some childhood memories attached to it. But at the same time, you had 4 months. Like, was it ever communicated that you should at least let me know before you sell it so I can take a look at it or something along those lines? Because I just, like, on one end, I understand the heartbreak, and probably there was some kind of thought of like, oh, they'll probably let me know before they sell it, so I'll come down there when, you know, the time is nigh. But you had 4 months. She was told that everything on the property was going to be sold or thrown away. That should have been the first cue for her to scurry down there and get her final goodbyes in check. Like, I feel a bit bad because there'll never be closure, but at the same time, you had 4 months. OP and their father were left with dealing with the entire estate on their own. I don't think they had time to really think about or consider any of that. Especially when, on top of all of that, the farm was supposed to be sold weeks ago, and that farm was probably known to have been sold, and it wasn't an issue for her then, so why is it suddenly an issue now? I don't know. Ben Shutterbug, entitled guest at a fancy hotel, buffet hoarders and thieves. I'm currently on vacation at a fancy hotel, and I witnessed 2 disturbing incidents this morning that left me questioning people's sense of entitlement and respect for others. At breakfast, I noticed a family, a couple, a kid, and a grandmother at a nearby table. What caught my attention was how they had essentially recreated the entire buffet at their table. After they finished loading up their plates, many items at the buffet were completely empty. Their table was piled high with plates full of untouched food. Ham, cheese, croissants, etc. When they left the restaurant, most of this food were made uneaten and would obviously be thrown away. The waste was overwhelming. Later, I went to get a drink from the beverage station. This area has a fancy machine with built-in jars for various juices and water. The machine automatically refills these jars when they're returned. Normally, people fill their glasses directly from the machine and immediately put the jar back. A woman approached the machine, took out the entire water jar, and walked away. At first, I thought she was just taking it to her table to fill multiple glasses, but after a while, I realized the jar was still missing. I looked around and saw that she had left the restaurant entirely, presumably taking the jar back to her room. When I informed a staff member, she seemed confused, repeating, She went out of the restaurant with the jar? Oh, really? Before quickly heading back to the kitchen. I'm left wondering, how can people be so disrespectful to the entire community? It would never cross my mind to behave like this. I can't even imagine considering such actions as possibilities. Have any of you witnessed similar entitled behavior in hotels or other public spaces? How'd you react? Hey, honestly, with the jar one, that machine sounds cool as hell, and I would love to see one in person, because I could maybe, just depending on if there's any signs posted, I could maybe see a bit of a misunderstanding of like, oh, like these are complimentary juice jars that I can bring up to my room. Awesome. And then she does that. I guess I could kind of understand that one. But like the whole thing of being at a buffet and just taking all the food and just leaving on the table and not eating all of it and just wasting that much food, that's pretty gross. And granted, I'm doing a lot of legwork for the lady who took the jar. And on an entirely other note that's not entirely related, there's these new like pancake conveyor belt makers at hotels. I saw one when I was like 17, and I lost my mind because it made a pancake that was actually shockingly really damn good for being pretty much just dispensed and factory made in front of you. So when YouTuber money started coming in when I was 19, I looked into getting my own, and it turns out you have to be a commercial building to buy one, which really sucked because my entire world shattered then. Because I had the whole dream of like waking up and just pushing a button, and then the batter tube dispenses a brand new pancake for me, and I can just engulf that every morning, have fresh pancakes with only the push of a button. But no! Instead, I have to have a qualified company that can actually go and purchase one and go through several hours of training. The rep was really nice, but I was pretty disappointed to find out that I didn't qualify for getting one of these machines. Like, can you honestly blame me though? But that jar machine does sound super cool, and if I ever encounter one in the wild, you bet your ass I'm gonna play with it for quite a while. Why do all the fancy hotels get all the futuristic appliances that I would dream to have in my kitchen? But no! Instead, you gotta be a qualified purchaser. Have you been waiting to try gamer subs, but the shipping cost is just a bit too high because you're not in America? Well, I got good news for you. For a limited time, for like a week, shipping is free if you use code EYES. The 10% discount has been replaced with free shipping. So if the usual spiel of gamer subs caught your attention, but the shipping costs were a bit high, now's your chance. So strap in and strap on and use code EYES at checkout for some free shipping between the days and... did I really just say that? It's September 6th to September 13th. Hope y'all enjoy free shipping. Code EYES.